Hello everybody. Today I want to talk to you about what I like and dislike about Paraguay. And it's really simple. What's there to like? Well, it's super cheap, as I mentioned. It's also a very peaceful place, stable. You don't hear a lot of people yelling over one another, interrupting each other. People tend to avoid conflict. There is a high premium put on tranquility, keeping things calm and stable. That's a good thing. That's a big advantage over Brazil, where there's constant noise, chaos, confusion, and constant interruptions and whatnot. Here you can find people gather together in large groups, and everybody talks in turn. Nobody yells over anybody. There is an emphasis on keeping the peace and stability. And that's one thing that foreigners have to be mindful of. So when you talk to local people, you have to make sure that you use a softer tone. You do not want to come across as being confrontational. Most of the people you meet here who speak loudly, who interrupt others, who use an insistent or a nagging or an annoyed tone, who express exasperation, most of these people are foreigners. This is generally not accepted in Paraguay. There are very few exceptions. Another important thing to like about Paraguay is that it's easy to get residency, and even if you don't get it, well, the immigration policy is not all that strict. Now, what about the cons? Well, one of the negatives is that even if you go to the capital, Asuncion, which is where I am, it still has a small town vibe to it. 500,000 people live here, but somehow everybody knows everybody. And Paraguay is just beginning to get new foreigners. So they're just beginning to experiment with tourists. So this is a close-knit community. There is this old saying here in Spanish, El Pueblo Chico y un infierno grande. It's a small community, but it's a big hell. Meaning, you gotta pay attention to how you present yourself, because the word gets around quickly. And Paraguayans don't want to stand out too much. They don't want to be colorful, because they know they'll be making themselves a subject of gossip. So that's an important thing. Blend in, don't make a spectacle of yourself, because the yard travels fast and your reputation is going to stick. Another thing to dislike about Paraguay is that it's an extremely friends and family oriented place. There is this saying, país de los amigos, country of friends, and this means corruption, nepotism, special favors. It's not unheard of for people to buy their fake COVID vaccines, fake yellow fever vaccines, fake residency papers. And if you know the right people, you're going to get away with it. Corruption is the norm, and that's one problem with this país de amigos issue, but it's just too close-knit. But the other problem you'll find with this as a foreigner is that local people will almost always, most of the time anyway, put their friends and family first. They may not have much time for you because they already have commitments with their friends or their family members. And this is the implication of this is rather interesting. The Paraguayans are generally friendly and accepting toward foreigners, genuinely curious. But, their need to form deep relationships with others is just not there. It's not as strong as it is for digital nomads or people who come from individualistic countries. You see, if you're coming from the United States or Northern Europe, you're from an individualistic culture. You're not going to be familiar with this concept of a close-knit community and family where you've known people for 20 years who look out for you. In Paraguay, there's no such thing as the hikikomori, the Japanese concept of an old man who dies alone. And in Japan, you find that a lot. In Japan, you see this quite a bit. In the United States, you see a lot of lonely people, older people. It's not uncommon in highly developed, westernized countries to encounter such isolation, especially among the elderly. In Paraguay, that's unheard of. So what do Northern Europeans do about this? What do people from wealthy countries do about it? Well, they look to find new connections with people, and sometimes they'll go to a country like Paraguay, because there's a lot to be said for it. It's cheap, it's easy to move here, especially if you work online, if you have a retirement income, and some of these foreigners will look to build connections with the local community in Paraguay. And one thing that disappoints them repeatedly is that Paraguayans are all set. They don't have much of a need to get to know new people because they are entrenched in their local community that they've known their entire life. So keep that in mind, that your social needs may be different from theirs. If you are from an individualistic culture, you do have a lot to gain by forming new connections. As after all, that may be one of the reasons why you've left your home country in the first place. But Paraguayans don't have that problem. If there is one thing that works in their lives, it's their ties to their community. And they feel connected, supported, and understood, and they just don't have much to gain by bringing new people in, except of course for money. I've seen this a lot. Quite a few foreigners do fall for this trap. They follow the promise of finding community, belonging, and companionship, but the reality is that it's just not really going to be reciprocated much of the time. The Paraguayans are all set when it comes to their social needs. They're happy with their social lives. The only thing that they're missing is capital, and that's where the foreigner comes in. Now, my suggestion is don't pay for attention. You can't buy companionship. You can't buy belonging. It's a trap. Don't do that. But if you're lucky enough to form authentic bonds with local people in Paraguay, count your blessings. That's a wonderful thing. But keep in mind, this is not going to be at all easy. Your needs and their needs are different. Your physio-psychological needs are going to be fundamentally different from theirs, so you got to keep that difference in perspective as you make your decisions in Paraguay. All in all, in summary, you see what the pros are, what I like about it. Easy to blend in, more or less, cheap, peaceful and quiet, distant and respectful, and the cons, of course. Well, the social life is a bit closed off, there's corruption, and of course, to all of this, I would add is that it's a neo-feudal society. It's not so different from how Spain and Portugal were 100 years ago. It's not all that different from how Great Britain was 500 years ago. You see a very tiny fraction of Paraguayans have all the money and all the political control, and the rest are more or less poor. So can you blame them when they see foreigners as an opportunity? Foreigners who may not be so streetwise, who may not be so familiar with the culture and the language, and these foreigners are socially isolated because of technology and this over-reliance on social media and the sense of being disconnected from others. That's all a consequence of highly individualistic society. They, Paraguayans, are going to see this as an exchange, as an opportunity to exchange some A for B, quid pro quo. But as I said, this is more of a trap. You do not want to be offering anybody unnecessary support financially or otherwise. You do not want to be overpaying just to make some kind of connections. I'd say that's the biggest takeaway here in this video about what I like and dislike about Paraguay. Follow my channel for more tips and travel, life abroad. I'll be going to Argentina soon. I'll keep you updated, and you can always book a free consultation. I can help you determine if this is the right time for you to move to another country and where specifically you'd be best off going. Thanks again, and you'll be hearing from me soon.